All right, beating the odds with Beeb. We're on a two-fight losing streak, and we got to get back in the win column bad. So we got to get out of this rut. And I think I got a pretty good pick for us this week to get us back in the win column. Andre Berto versus Victor Ortiz in the rematch. Now, I was actually at the first fight, and to be perfectly honest with you, I was sitting around a lot of people, and we had this fight real close. A lot of people had the fight a draw. Some people had Victor Ortiz winning by a point or two. Some people even had Andre Berto winning by a point or two. I believe at the time, Dan Rafael, his scorecard had Andre Berto winning. And when I went home and watched the fight again on the DVR, I did have Victor Ortiz winning the fight 114 and 112. But initially, I thought this was a fight that could have been a draw, could have went either way. So Victor Ortiz did beat Andre Berto in the first fight, but I think a lot of people, when they talk about that performance now, they look at it as if Victor Ortiz dominated Berto. I mean, this was a close competitive fight, and this was a fight where you had the best possible Victor Ortiz possible, where you might not have had the best Andre Berto possible. Admittedly, he felt a little flat, and he said so after the fight. Whether that's a good excuse or not, I mean, he seemed a little bit off to me. He seemed to fade a little bit as the fight wore on, and credit that to Victor Ortiz. And I'm going to talk about why I believe that happened and why Victor Ortiz was able to close this fight strong and eke out a victory. Victor Ortiz, we know back in the heyday, known for his aggressiveness, has a similar attack pattern to Manny Pacquiao where he likes to go in and out. He's an ambush fighter. He jumps in, jumps back out to reset. So he's a guy that, you know, kind of uses his legs somewhat for defense. He's not a guy that really has a lot of head movement and slips shots very well and parries shots. He's a guy that he's either on offense or he's on defense. So meaning he's going forward, and when he's going backward, he's looking to get out of harm's way and reset. And we know that. And also he squares up a little bit, sort of like Manny Pacquiao does, but he's obviously not as dynamic as Manny Pacquiao. So he's not going to be able to get away with it as much as Manny Pacquiao is because he doesn't have the superb reflexes that Manny Pacquiao has, and that those fast twitch muscle fibers. Manny Pacquiao is just gifted. We know that, and Victor Ortiz is he's a talented fighter. Don't get me wrong, and he has some decent speed and some decent explosiveness, but he's no Manny Pacquiao. So when he squares up, a lot of times he's getting caught with shots, and a lot of times he'll get knocked down because he'll be squared up and off balance. And he also, actually went down in that first Berto fight because he was squared up, and Berto caught him right on the chin, and caught him tangling up his feet, and he went down. So in that fight, both fighters both scored 2 knockdowns each. I thought it was very competitive, very close up into the 8th round, but then that's where I saw the fight turn because the thing that was going on is I think when Andre Berto had Victor Ortiz in his chest, when Victor Ortiz was on the attack, when he was going forward and darting in, he stayed in the pocket a little bit, and he really made that time up close count for him because he was digging to Andre Berto's body exceptionally well in that fight, and I think it took a toll on Andre Berto and took his legs away and made him fade late, and that's where I think the difference was. Andre Berto did some good counterpunching, landed some good straight rights, caught Victor Ortiz coming in a few times, but Victor Ortiz just kept coming. He was relentless. This was not the same Victor Ortiz that we saw in the Marcos Maidana fight. This was not somebody whose will was broken. This was somebody that was hell-bent on really, really fighting an aggressive fight, and he had a look in his eyes that night like nothing was going to stop him. And after that fight, I was saying to myself, wow, maybe he got rid of and shook off the ghost of Marcos Maidana. Maybe those demons have been erased from his mind. But then we saw the Floyd Mayweather performance, where he may not have given up physically because of what was going on, but mentally he broke down. And it looked as though he checked out in that fight, and we all saw what happened with the headbutt, putting his hands down and trying to hug Mayweather, and Mayweather hit him when his hands were down. And I thought, that was a very smart move by Mayweather, and I thought it was warranted on Mayweather's part, and I have no problem with Mayweather did, although a lot of people do. But whatever the case may be, that was one instance. And then we saw the instance with Josecito Lopez. Now, maybe it's unfair to criticize that because that was a pretty bad broken jaw that he suffered in that fight, but it was a fight that he was winning. And we have seen fighters with broken jaws or busted up eyes continue. And I'm not saying that he should have continued because, a lot of fighters probably would have stopped. And if there was ever a reason to stop in a fight, that was a good reason. But he was winning, possibly could have held on and got the decision, but he chose to stop. And I have no problem with that. But again, because of what happened in the Maidana fight and the Mayweather fight, already there's a history. So we're going to judge him possibly because of the past, and it seems to just keep on carrying on. But not only that, then we have the fight with Luis Collazo where he gets hit with a right hook that was a decent shot, but it just did not look like a knockout blow. When he went down, I really thought he was going to get up. I didn't think he was going to take that 10 count. So this is a guy that after that first Berto fight, I thought this was a rebuilt fighter mentally. Because physically he was always there. I mean, he had the power, he had the explosiveness and speed, he had the strength. He was pretty decent technically when it comes to throwing punches. He was a sharp puncher. Squared up a little bit. Wasn't an exceptional defensive fighter, but he had quick feet, so he can get out of harm's way. We knew that. Andre Berto, another athletically gifted guy, hard puncher, good counter puncher, decent left hook, very good straight right hand, could hurt you with either hand. But he needs space. He likes to have space to be effective, so he's not an exceptional up close fighter, and that's where I think the difference was in the first fight. But be that as it may, I still think Andre Berto did well, landed good counter shots, timed Victor Ortiz when he was leaping in, when he was doing his darting in attack, caught him with some right hands, and it was he had some success in that fight. So the big thing here is how much will this fight resemble the first fight? I think it may a little bit in spots, but I'm not so sure vicious Victor Ortiz will be as vicious in this fight as he was in the first fight. And that's where I think the big difference is going to be. Both these guys have faded. Both these guys have suffered losses. And even Andre Berto had suffered a knockout loss. And he was injured. He hurt his arm in that fight. But he actually went out on his shield. He went out on his shield. We've never really seen Victor Ortiz go out on his shield. He takes himself out of the fight instead of going out on his shield. And again, that is no knock on him. But when you have a guy that will never quit in the ring and has to go out on his shield to stop versus a guy that doesn't have the same mentality. And then you have guys, both fighters are skilled in their own right. They're somewhat athletic. Both guys can punch a little bit. Both guys have speed. So you got to say to yourself, how do I make this determination? What separates one guy from the other? And that is Andre Berto's heart, because he was getting frustrated in his fight with Mayweather, just as Victor Ortiz was. But he stayed in there, he kept fighting, and he did not quit physically or mentally. And he kept pressing the action. He just didn't have the skill and ability to keep up with an elite fighter like Mayweather. I mean, who does? So this is a fight where I think Victor Ortiz will try to overwhelm and smother Andre Berto in spots. But the thing is, this time, when Andre Berto hits him with a counter right hand and knocks him down, as he did twice in the first fight, big question I have is, will he get up, number one? And if he does get up, will he still go at Andre Berto with that same ferocity that he did back in 2011? My answer to that question is no, I do not think so. And the reason why I say that is because the Mayweather fight. The Josecito Lopez fight, and the Luis Collazo fight, all those fights that happened after the best performance of his career against Andre Berto. Whereas Andre Berto, he's had his shortcomings too, but there's been instances where he struggled, like in his fight with Josecito Lopez, where it looked like he was fading a little bit, but because of his heart and because of his never give up attitude, he actually went back and stopped Josecito Lopez. Okay? And even in his fight with Robert Guerrero, where both eyes were swelled up, he held on and fought to the end. And that fight was a pretty decent fight, and it was a somewhat competitive fight. Lost the fight clearly, but he made a good account of himself in that fight. So I think that Andre Berto is going to win this fight because I think mentally he's stronger. Just as I thought in the first fight that he was mentally stronger, but Victor Ortiz rose to the occasion. But going back to those other three mishaps where he mentally checked out, there's a pattern, and then there's the layoff. And Andre Berto's been in there with top level guy after top level guy, and he's really never had a breather since. So I think Andre Berto is, mentally prepared better for this fight. I think he has, a different attitude than Victor Ortiz has. Victor Ortiz says, "Oh, I can always go back to making movies." Andre Berto isn't concerned about making movies. Andre Berto's a fighter. Okay, he's a fighter, and that's what he does. And he's going to keep getting up as long as he can, whereas Victor Ortiz may not this time. So if this comes down to, who wants it more, if this fight shapes up to be a gritty fight, I don't think Victor Ortiz is going to keep coming like he did in the first fight. I don't think that's the same Victor Ortiz mentally. This is a Victor Ortiz that's been away for a while. He's been making movies, as I said. So I don't think that Victor Ortiz will come back if he gets knocked down in this fight, if he gets hurt. Because I think it's built in his mind already that, hey, there's a back door for me. And if I need to take it, I'm going to take it. That may sound harsh, but I think it's the truth at this stage of his career. So I'm going with Andre Berto in this fight. Andre Berto is a minus 170. Victor Ortiz is like a plus 125, I believe. So I'm going to take Andre Berto in this fight. I'm going to lay the 170 to get that $100 return. And this time I really feel good about it. I really feel good about it. I think that, Andre Berto will pull this one out. I think he's got more in the tank mentally and physically. And that's just the way I see it. And Lucien Butte, I think, is a live underdog against Badu Jack. I'm not going to put that in the plays for this week, but it is something to look at. He's a plus 265 against Badu Jack. We saw Badu Jack in two of his big fights against Andre Durrell and, Anthony Durrell, not Andre Durrell, against Anthony Durrell and George Groves. I thought those fights were razor thin. I thought he pulled them out, but they were razor thin. He got, narrowly beat those guys. I think Badu Jack is a good boxer. I think he fights well from the outside, but sometimes he gets a little bit over aggressive. Throws those big shots sometimes, especially that left hook, and he'll lean in a little bit. And Lucien Butte is an outstanding counterpuncher, and I think he may be able to catch him with something big leaning in. Could catch him with that patented left uppercut. So this is definitely a fight to look at. I'm not going to put it in this week's plays, as I said, but Lucien Butte is a live dog, and if you want to lay a little something on that, I would not be against it. But this week's pick is going to be Andre Berto, with the minus 165 actually, because if you use the reduced juice option on the 5-dime site, you can get a minus 165. So we're going to lay the minus 165 to get that $100 return. And that's the pick this week, man. And we'll have a recap tomorrow. And I hope this losing streak will be over tomorrow. Until next time, Beeb is out. Talk to y'all soon. Peace.